Well, the developments in the gubernatorial Arizona race have been fast and furious.
Kari Lake loses her election lawsuit and hopes of becoming governor. A judge made the ruling today after a two-day trial this week. Lake challenged the election, claiming fraud and misconduct, mostly centered around ballot printers, and asked the court to declare her governor or force a new election in Maricopa County. But Judge Peter Thompson, a Jan Brewer appointee, found no evidence of widespread misconduct and threw out the case. Lake lost to Katie Hobbs by more than 17,000 votes and was a vocal supporter of the election lies spread by former President Trump and followed in his footsteps, denying her election loss and filing a lawsuit claiming she was cheated with scant evidence. Lake has until 5 p.m. December 26th to file an appeal. In a tweet today, Lake says she does plan to appeal, writing, "My election case provided the world with evidence that proves our elections are run outside of the law. This judge did not rule in our favor. However, for the sake of restoring faith and honesty in our elections, I will appeal his ruling." Hobbs' campaign released a statement as well, writing in part, "The voters of Arizona, not the conspiracy-riddled dark corners of the internet, are the ones who chose our leaders. We're pleased that the courts have upheld the will of the voters, and Governor-elect Hobbs is continuing the work of preparing to take office as Arizona's next governor."
A judge will not sanction Kari Lake or her team, her attorneys, for a lawsuit that she brought regarding the election results in the state. But she will have to pay thousands of dollars in court fees. The judge ruled today that Lake will have to pay $33,000 to Governor-elect Katie Hobbs. Hobbs in Maricopa County filed the motion to seek sanctions yesterday after the judge threw out Lake's challenge of her defeat in the Arizona governor's race. Lake and her counsel said they plan to appeal that ruling, but so far, no appeal.
And this just broke about an hour ago. Conservative commentator Charlie Kirk posted this on Twitter. Breaking, an internal source has shared that a rural Arizona county has found a significant miscount, netting Abraham Hamadeh with hundreds of new votes. Sources suspect Katie Hobbs is not quickly releasing this revelation to provide as little time for public reaction, end of quote. To react to all of this, Arizona gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake. Kari, I still believe that ultimately you're going to become the next governor of Arizona.
Well, I do too. Unfortunately, we have to win in court now after I believe we won in a landslide at the ballot box. But we have crooks, criminals, and clowns running our elections in Arizona. And I'm not surprised at all about this Abe Hamadeh development. As a matter of fact, I had a source that informed me of that as well. This is a problem that expands outside of Maricopa County, but most of the issues are here in Maricopa County, where we presented just 2 counts out of 10 that we brought in our lawsuit. 2 counts were allowed to go to trial, and we believe we proved without a shadow of a doubt misconduct, malfeasance, and just complete maladministration in the running of our elections here in Maricopa County, where we proved hundreds of thousands, almost 300,000 ballots had no chain of custody, yet they were counted. Those are invalid ballots. We also proved that they, at least 60% of all of the election day voting centers, at least 60% of those voting centers had ballot printers that were not functioning properly, that were actually printing out a 19-inch image on a 20-inch piece of paper, which resulted in the tabulator machines jamming and not counting those votes. We proved that it went beyond just incompetence. There was an attempt to silence the vote of people who show up on election day. And our evidence showed that 75% of the people who showed up on election day were people voting for me. So this was an attempt to defeat us and install a illegitimate leader like Katie Hobbs. And it's just despicable, Larry, what's happening in our elections. We will work, and we're going to continue our case and move it into the appeals court. We just filed yesterday, we filed our notice of appeals that we will be trying to get this expedited in the appeals court.
Well, that was my next question. What's next? Where will this ultimately go?
Well, we're asking for this, and I'm reading some of my notes because I am not an attorney. We're asking for this to be not only filed in the appellate court, but also seek relief in the Arizona Supreme Court. And we're hoping that we are granted that relief. And we'll take a look at what's happening, and we'll ask the appellate court and the Supreme Court to rule on this, because this is not about me. It really isn't. It never has been about me. I jumped into this race because the people of Arizona asked me to run. And we led a massive movement of real, regular people who showed up in droves on election day to vote and to bring about change, to make sure that we could have secure borders once again, that we could end the fentanyl crisis, that we could properly educate our kids, bring down the crime in our state, and really bring about election reform. And that's why people showed up in droves to vote for me. But the criminals and the clowns running our elections knew that with a governor like me, their whole racket would come crumbling down. And that's why they threw out all the stops, cheated in broad daylight to stop this. So we're asking the Supreme Court of Arizona to jump in and rule and do the right thing to save not only Arizona, but our republic. Because once we save one state, we will spread to other states election reform and election integrity.
Carrie, you gave one of the great quotes probably of all time in politics. They picked the wrong biatch.
To mess with. Yeah, I did say that.
You sure did, except you didn't say biatch.
Yeah, let me clean it up. They picked the wrong woman to mess with. They picked the wrong woman to mess with. If they thought, somebody said, oh, just, be graceful and you lost, be great. No, we didn't lose. If I would have lost, I would be graceful, and it would be graceful. But I don't walk away when I've been the victim of a crime. And it's not just me. The people of Arizona have been the victim of a stolen election. And I promised when I ran for governor that I would stand up and fight for the people of Arizona every single day. And I am still fighting for them because they're asking me, do not exit this fight until we have election reform and honest elections. Because if I walk away from the fight, who's going to stand up and demand honest elections?
What's this? I got a couple of, well, actually it's one pair, two shoes. Why do people say I have a couple of pairs? One pair, two shoes. MYPILLOW, my slippers. Call the number on your screen. Order your own. You can't have this one. Order your own. They come in different colors, also different styles. Can you believe it? Or go to mypillow.com, promo code ELDER. And of course, don't forget the product that made MYPILLOW, the MYPILLOW. Again, come in different sizes. Just call the number on your screen or go to mypillow.com and be sure and use promo code ELDER. And don't forget the MYPILLOW, turn this around, 6-pack, including towels, hand cloths, face cloths, different colors. Mine, of course, is white because I'm the black face of white supremacy, but you might want different colors. And then finally, I've got here the MYPILLOW Giza Dream Bedsheet. Now, as I said, class, Giza is in Egypt. It's not an area near Egypt where somebody named Larry Elder used to say. It is in Egypt where the finest cotton in the world is found. Mike Lindell scoured the world to find it. Call the number on your screen. Don't forget, there are over 100 products. I counted them, 100 products. MyPillow.com, promo code ELDER. Carry a couple things. I mentioned this tweet by Charlie Kirk. Tell me who Abe Hamadeh is and why is it relevant?
Abe Hamadeh is an America First candidate, much like myself, who ran an incredible campaign here in Arizona running for Attorney General based on restoring law and order and getting tough on crime and making our streets safe once again. And he was running against a complete lunatic lefty who was more interested in fighting the climate than fighting crime. And Abe won, I believe, the entire America First movement, and the slate of America First candidates won in a massive way and in Arizona. And so he's been fighting for a recount, and they're holding back, it sounds like, some of these votes and some of this evidence because they want to, they're hoping to just slide in there, steal an election, slide in, install their phony folks into office, and then that people will get over it and just deal with it. And that's not what's going to happen. We're not going to just deal with a selection rather than election. This is our sacred vote. And if we don't stand up and fight to have honest elections at this moment, when we've been wronged, when we have evidence of that wrongdoing, then we will lose our country for good. And that's what we're doing. So Abe Hamadeh has been working to get a recount. Their official total with him was that he was down 500 votes, and I think they found a significant number in a county outside of Maricopa County.
Your margin did or did not trigger a recount?
Did not.
Did not.
But again, this America First movement is so massive. This Arizona First movement, Larry, is so massive here that they couldn't just cheat the way they did in 2020, where it happened in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. and there was some adjustment of votes. They had to pull out all the stops this time. They had to do the middle of the night shenanigans. They had to bring in, and we have whistleblowers and evidence proving this, 300,000 ballots that came out of who knows where, that have no chain of custody. They pumped those into the system. Then 2 days after the election, 25,000 additional ballots showed up. Once they realized that all their cheating still didn't net enough of a victory, they threw in 25,000 additional ballots with no chain of custody 2 days after the election. They also had to shut down and sabotage Election Day voting for the hundreds of thousands of people who showed up in Maricopa County. And they had to make sure that they printed the wrong ballot so that would jam the tabulator machines. What they did, they pulled out all the stops to steal this election, and it still wasn't enough. They had to do it in broad daylight because our movement is that powerful.
You're not a lawyer, but you are an expert in the media. How do you feel the media has been covering this thing since the election? Have they been fair to you, unfair?
Oh my goodness, horrible. I mean, the mainstream media is just disgusting. We were sitting in the same courtroom as a couple of these propagandists, and it was almost, when I would read or look at what they printed, I thought, were we even in the same courtroom? Did they even hear the same evidence? They have to push their narrative, or the whole house of cards comes crumbling down on them. So it doesn't matter how much truth they hear. They have to keep pushing out that narrative. Otherwise, their entire system built on lies and an agenda comes crumbling down, and they will push it until the bitter end because they have no choice. They're about to be completely, phased out. I don't think people are listening to them. And the interesting thing, Larry, is, many different outlets were putting out our trial. It was a 2-day trial. We were only given 5.5 hours to prove our case, even though we could have showed more evidence and done even more for our case. We were only given 5.5 hours by the judge. It was covered by numerous outlets, and every video I saw that was covering our trial, whether it be day 1 or day 2, showed 400,000 views, 500,000 views. A lot of people saw the evidence we put forth. And so in a way, we've already won because we're getting information out there, waking people up to the corruption in our election system. And I'm really, really pleased about that we were able to have that day in court. And I'm hoping our appeal is more of the same, where people actually get to see how corrupt this is. One of the things the judge would not allow us to bring forth was the count on the lack of signature verification, or at least the process that is so broken, where the people doing the signature verification were reporting to us. Some of the whistleblowers that came forward, 3 of them, said they were denying tens of thousands of signatures every day. They were basically saying these were not legitimate signatures because they were just a scratch rather than a signature. But somebody in the chain of command was then taking those tens of thousands of signatures that weren't really signatures and pushing them forward and counting them as valid ballots when they were clearly not. And I'll tell you what, if the public would have been allowed to see that, every man and woman in Arizona would immediately say, we don't want mail-in ballots anymore. There's no security with these ballots. And that is how they're cheating.
Speaking of the public in Arizona, has there been any polling on how people feel? Do they feel that the election was rigged, was stolen? Do they feel you won? Has there been any polling on any of that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Bloomberg, I believe it was Bloomberg, did a poll after Election Day, and 70+% of Arizona voters did not feel that every vote counted, that they didn't feel that the elections were run fairly. And more than 60% of them, or 60% of them, were Democrat voters. So this is bipartisan. Democrats are looking at our election system saying it's broken, It doesn't work. It's not right what's happening. And Republicans feel the same exact way. More than 80% of election day poll staffers and workers that were working the polls, so they were the ones helping to run the system, said they had no confidence in the way this election was run. No confidence in the way the election was run. This is 83% of the people who were poll workers and poll watchers. They were exasperated. They saw the people show up in mass on election day only to show up and have the system completely melt down, the printers printing out the wrong type of ballot. Our expert said the only way that could have happened was through a malicious nature. It could not have been accidental. It wasn't somebody bumping up against the printer and
Right.
accidentally resetting the printing settings. This had to be an intentional act. We proved that in court. Unfortunately, the judge ruled against us, but that's okay because we're going to push it up to the appellate court.
Carrie, has former President Donald Trump said anything about this? If so, what has he said?
I've talked to him several times. He was really pleased with our case. He believes we have incredible evidence. He was disappointed with the judge's ruling, and he's happy to see that we're going to continue to appeal it. He's feeling that America has become very corrupt, and I agree with him. We're watching this as as the Twitter files kind of unroll, or roll out, I should say. And we're seeing how the FBI and other government agencies are controlling our speech, censoring us, controlling a narrative to push an agenda, how the FBI was working with social media to propel corrupt Joe Biden's campaign and stop the America First movement by censoring people who were trying to get pertinent information out that would have opened people's eyes to the corruption of the Biden family. The FBI was behind that. Our own government is trying to control the outcome of an election. That is criminal.
Katie Hobbs, is she nervous? Is she worried?
She should be. I mean, I know that Katie Hobbs knows she didn't win this. I know that Katie Hobbs knows she cheated. The whole state knows it. The whole state knows this is a racket. This is a joke. She's a joke of a candidate. And I don't know how she would even govern because the state is not behind her. And they are losing control of their narrative as more information gets out about how they ran these elections, how corrupt these elections are. She's a complete joke. She's couldn't even articulate her policies. She didn't show up to debate. She didn't even campaign. She's our own. We have our very own version of Joe Biden here in Arizona, and her name is Katie Hobbs.
Finally, Carrie, let me say, you look strong, poised, calm, confident as always. How are you holding up? This has got to be pretty up and down roller coaster for you.
You know, I'm doing fine. It's unfortunate that we have to win again, and this time in the judicial system, which is also corrupt. But I believe God put me here because he knows what a fighter I am. And most people would probably just concede and walk away and be angry about it. I am going to continue fighting. We're not going to leave any stone unturned, and we are going to work to bring back honesty and justice into this botched, stolen election. Right. So is it tiring? Yes. Do I wish we didn't have to go this route? Of course. But this is about waking people up. And you can't just sometimes tell people how bad the system is. You have to show them. And they got a real taste of it on election day when the good people of Arizona showed up and watched their sacred vote get trampled upon.
Carrie Lake, keep us posted.
I will. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure.